Alright, today we take a very close look at the recently released Blancpain Swatch Scuba 50 Fathoms series, and in particular the Blancpain Swatch Bioceramic Scuba 50 Fathoms Arctic Ocean. Now, following the insanely successful Moonswatch release, the very first collaborative effort of this kind, where Omega teamed up with Swatch, of course, we are now presented with this Blancpain and Swatch release. Now, before we continue, let's get the essential details out of the way here. The Arctic Ocean model presented here has a case out of beige bioceramic material, including the crown. It features a diameter of 42.3mm and a thickness of a whopping 14.4mm. The lug-to-lug distance is 48mm and the lug width then is a rather odd 21.2mm. Water resistance is, of course, 50 fathoms or 91 meters. The glass then is what Swatch calls its biosourced material with anti-scratch coating. Hence, our markers 60 minutes diving scale are all lumed with grade A Super-LumiNova. The bezel is a one-direction rotating bezel, again in that same bioceramic material with anti-scratch coating and an insert in orange. Now, the bezel clicks and feels very nicely, and in my case the 12 o'clock marker lines up perfectly there, which is always good news. The strap then is a NATO strap here, made from recycled fishing nets removed from the sea. The metal dial is printed in several layers of colors, creating a sort of fumé effect here on this one. A special symbol can be found on the bottom part of the dial with the words "No Radiations" below the logo. This is a nod to the Blancpain 50 Fathoms NORAD, which featured this symbol, clearly indicated that the dial at the time wasn't using any radioactive materials for the loom. The System 51 mechanical movement then is visible thanks to a transparent sapphire glass and features an illustration of, in this case, an illustration specific to the Arctic Ocean here in digital print. The movement has a lovely 90-hour power reserve. Now, with that out of the way, let's discuss a couple of points which I feel you should know or at least be aware of before buying this watch. Now, let me start perhaps with the more controversial opinion about this watch, ignoring if you like the looks of this watch, because let's face it, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, is it not? Now, the message that comes with this release is one about preserving nature, caring for our planet, and it is reflected in the naming of these watches, of course, the branding, the laser engraving on the rotors, and yes, even the straps, which are made from reclaimed fishing nets. However, it does feel a bit odd then that these are essentially plastic watches that will probably end up in the ocean as well at one point in time, perhaps in the shape of microplastics, who knows? And then on top of all, they come armed with this System 51 movement. Now, these are famous for being absolute engineering marvels, but they are also infamous for being irreparable. So here you have a watch that is supposed to send this loud environmental message: do good, hug a tree, don't use plastic straws and all that. Yet we are talking about a bioceramic watch with what appears to be an irreparable and irreplaceable movement. So once these break, and they will break, these apparently will go straight to the garbage bin. Odd, very odd, but there is some question as to how irreparable these really are. You see, System 51s are irreparable, yes, but you could potentially swap the entire movement out, of course, and thereby keeping your plastic watch away from ending up in the garbage or in the stomach of some innocent sea turtle. Now, there are some, as far as I can tell, unverified comments online that state that this particular release features a snap-on or screw-on case back, which would allow you to open the watch and replace that movement. That then means that you could swap your movement, that you could extend the lifespan of this watch. And I would love for that to be true, but there is really nothing on Swatch's website that confirms this. And would they not market that if this were the case for this particular release? I believe they would, which thereby leaves me with serious doubt that these can be replaced at all. I will be happily proven wrong, but again, to date there is nothing confirmed out of Swatch, at least black and white, that states that yes, you can open these up and yes, they will replace the movement for you. Now in itself, that is basically the same for most Swatch watches, of course, fun, affordable plastic watches that probably won't last a lifetime. However, since here they do scream such a loud message regarding the environment, I do think this is a missed opportunity. If they are replaceable, well, they should have put that on top of their marketing message. Now again, I do not know what the definitive answer is here, but I would certainly not state here on the record that yes, they are for sure replaceable. Now then, one additional point to mention is simply the colors here that Swatch and Blancpain chose for this release. They are very colorful, yes, but also borderline, to my eye, well, borderline ugly. A simple uniform color choice, similar to what was done with the Moonswatch, for example, could have made these substantially more attractive if you ask me. But yes, I am aware that is all very subjective. However, let's take a simple black bezel, right? That would have gone a long way. Or a more muted color scheme for at least one release in the lineup. Another point that I want to mention here is simply on the strap side of things. The strap is good quality, it's much more comfortable than what you would find on the Moonswatch, but a 21.2mm lug width. Really, Swatch, come on already! A nice standard 21mm would have worked just as well, yet here we are. Good luck finding an ATO strap in your collection that will fit this watch perfectly. Note also that the spring bars require tiny hex keys to be removed, not exactly inviting easy strap changes over the course of its limited lifetime. In fairness, yes, I am aware that the original 50 Fathoms also has an odd lug width, so well, I guess there is that. Now then finally, a word on price. So these are around $400 depending where you live. For this kind of money, you can get a nice steel watch, for example from Seiko, that will outlast you, no issues, that you will be able to service and so on and so forth. So if budget is an issue, these would certainly not be my first recommendation for you. I would urge you to look elsewhere. $400 is a lot of money already for a watch, and you can get very nice watches in that price range. Very nice mechanical watches in that price range. Now, of course, for everyone else, including myself, I find these watches fun watches, although I can't say I can agree with all the color variations they have created for these, which I mentioned earlier. Now, I cannot possibly do a video on this release without bringing up its predecessor, the Swatch and Omega collaboration, of course, the Moonswatch, world famous at this point. Having these here side by side, they are of course entirely different watches. What I do have to say is that my impression is that the Scuba 50 here overall feels more solid. So from crown to case and the strap, it all seems more comfortable than what I find here on the Moonswatch. Now that said, I feel that the Moonswatch is far more wearable than the Scuba 50 here, simply because of the more muted color options, the slimmer profile, and so on and so forth, as long as you take it off its standard strap, that is. Now the Scuba 50 does not really have any muted color options available if you ask me, and it seems that Blancpain and Swatch really went for just about the loudest color combinations they could think of, and that in itself limits a bit the wearability of these watches compared to the Moonswatch. Anyway, enough about the Moonswatch. This video is about the Scuba 50. So do I even like the watch? Well, yes, absolutely. Otherwise I would not have bought one in the first place. So from all the variations in this release, I like the no-date versions most, and the colors and old school dial and logos on the Arctic and Antarctic editions the most. But to each his own, of course. Now, on the wrist, the watch wears very nicely, although I do have to say that the case thickness, which is almost 15 millimeters, in combination with that quite solid NATO strap, makes the watch sit higher than I'm usually comfortable with. So you may want to try this out first on your wrist before taking the plunge. Then the System 51 movement is a loud movement, there is no way around it. When in a quiet room, you can absolutely hear the rotor spinning when in luck. This is, of course, exactly the same on all System 51 Swatch watches as far as I can tell, so this is not really news at this point. Now, on the wrist, this watch screams fun and vacation for me, so I really love the great water resistance on this watch as well. 91 meters has me covered for sure, so when out and about, it stays on the wrist. Also on vacation, when near a beach, near the pool, there is no reason to leave this watch in the room. It can just stay on the wrist at all times. I can't say the same for the Moonswatch, which I actually try and keep away from water as much as possible when I'm wearing it, including on vacation. So quick note as well here is, I do have to say that this watch feels overall more premium than the Moonswatch on the wrist. I have no clue if that has anything to do with the weight or the strap, no idea, but it feels all a little bit more solid and well made than on the initial Moonswatch. Now, these are fun watches, and I think they will certainly have introduced a new audience to Blancpain as a brand, and I for one really like this strategy that Swatch is following with these releases, and I'm looking forward to see what they do next. Only thing about this particular release, in my view, is that, well, they could have tried to keep the price a little bit down, I guess, but with the popularity of the Moonswatch, I figured they tried to increase the price a little bit, and I also wish they would have given us a tiny bit more, let's say, neutral color options for these watches, which would have made them a bit more appealing to more people, I believe. All in all, I do like this release, and as I said, I'm quite curious to see what Swatch comes out with next. What are your thoughts on this release? Let me know in the comments. Thank you and see you next time.